You check your numbers every morning, and some days they cooperate, and some days they betray you. And in that silence between the reading and your next breath, you wonder the one thing no one around you truly understands. Is my body still fighting for me, or has it already started to give up? There is a question that lives inside the mind of every person who has ever been told they have diabetes. It does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives at 2 in the morning, when the house is still and the only sound is the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of a clock that suddenly feels like a countdown. Sometimes it surfaces during a routine conversation, when someone mentions a relative who lost their vision, or a coworker who needed dialysis, or a friend whose foot never quite healed. Sometimes it appears in the waiting room of a clinic, while you sit surrounded by strangers who all carry the same invisible weight, the same unspoken dread. The question is simple, and it is devastating. How much damage has already been done? It is not a clinical question, really. It is an existential one. It is the question of someone trying to understand their own body from the outside. Someone who has been told that something is wrong beneath the surface, but who cannot see it, cannot touch it, cannot measure the full scope of what is happening inside. And that invisible quality of diabetes, the way it operates behind closed doors, behind layers of tissue and silence, is what makes it so psychologically relentless. Because diabetes, unlike a broken bone or a wound you can see, does not always announce its destruction. It works in whispers. It moves through blood vessels like a slow tide, touching organs you cannot feel, altering tissues you cannot see. And so you live in a strange kind of limbo, functional enough to go about your day, but never fully certain whether the disease is dormant or quietly advancing. That uncertainty is perhaps the cruelest part of this condition. Not the injections, not the dietary restrictions, not even the numbers themselves, but the not knowing. The constant question mark that hovers over your body like a shadow you cannot outrun. But here is something that most people with diabetes are never told, something that could change the entire way you experience this condition. Your body is already answering that question, every single day. It is answering it through abilities you may take for granted, functions so ordinary, so embedded in your daily routine that you have stopped noticing them. And yet, each one of those preserved abilities is a message, a quiet, steady signal from your physiology that says, I am still here. I am still working. I have not surrendered. Today, I want to walk through 5 of those abilities. 5 things your body may still be doing right now. Things that carry far more meaning than you realize. And if you still have them, if they are still intact, then something profoundly important is happening inside you. Something worth understanding. Something worth protecting. Let us begin with the first one. And it starts with something so fundamental, so woven into your daily existence, that you probably have not given it a single thought today. It starts with your feet. Stand up for a moment, or simply recall the last time you walked barefoot across a cold tile floor, or stepped on a small pebble in the garden, or felt the texture of thick carpet beneath your toes after a long day. That sensation, that immediate, sharp, unmistakable feeling traveling from the sole of your foot up through your ankle and into your conscious awareness, is not just comfort. It is not just a reflex. It is evidence. It is evidence that the tiny nerve fibers in your feet, the ones most vulnerable to high blood sugar, are still functioning. These are peripheral nerves, and they are among the first casualties when diabetes goes unmanaged over time. When glucose remains elevated for months or years, it begins to erode the protective coating around these nerve fibers, a process known as peripheral neuropathy. The damage starts subtly, a slight tingling, a vague numbness, a feeling like your feet are wrapped in invisible cotton. But if you can still feel temperature changes, if you can still sense pressure, if you still flinch when you step on something sharp, your peripheral nervous system is holding the line. That is not trivial. That is your body telling you that one of the most delicate systems diabetes targets has not been compromised. And the implications are enormous. Because sensation in your feet is not just about comfort, it is about safety. People who lose that sensation are at dramatically higher risk for wounds they never notice, infections that escalate silently, and complications that can become irreversible. So every time you feel the ground beneath you, truly feel it. Recognize what that means. Your nerves are intact. Your body is still communicating with its extremities. That line of defense is still standing. Now let us move to the second ability. And this one involves something you are using right now, in this very moment, whether you realize it or not. Your eyes. Think about the last time you read a text message on your phone, or followed a line of impossibly small print on the side of a medicine bottle, or noticed a bird perched on a distant wire while driving, its silhouette sharp against the sky. Think about the effortlessness of that, how your eyes adjusted, focused, delivered information to your brain in fractions of a second without you ever asking them to. That clarity, that ability to focus, shift depth, track movement, and interpret fine visual detail is powered by a structure at the back of your eye called the retina. And the retina is, in essence, a living canvas woven entirely from blood vessels. Diabetes, when it is poorly controlled, begins to damage those vessels. They swell, they leak. New, fragile vessels grow where they should not. This process, called diabetic retinopathy, is one of the leading causes of vision loss worldwide. And it happens in stages, often without any symptoms at all until the damage is advanced. But if your vision remains sharp, if you can still read comfortably, still recognize faces across a room, still see the world in crisp, full detail, that is a powerful sign. It means the blood vessels in your retina have maintained their structural integrity. It means that whatever you are doing, your medication, your nutrition, your lifestyle, is protecting one of the most vulnerable and irreplaceable tissues in your body. I want you to understand something that changes the way you look at looking itself. Vision is not just about seeing. For someone living with diabetes, clear vision is a daily report card, a physiological verdict delivered in real time. Every time you look at the world and see it clearly, your retina is confirming. The vessels here are holding. The walls are intact. The flow is steady. No leaking, no swelling, no abnormal growth. That is not luck. That is your body responding. And there is a deeper layer here that most people miss. The blood vessels in your retina are some of the smallest in your entire body. They are microvascular, meaning they reflect the health of your smallest circulatory pathways. When these vessels remain intact, it often suggests that the microvasculature elsewhere, in your kidneys, in your nerves, in your extremities, may also be holding steady. Your eyes, in a very real sense, are a window not just to the world, but to the state of your entire vascular system. The third ability is one that most people would never think to associate with diabetes, but it is deeply connected, and it has to do with your kidneys. Here is what I want you to notice. When you urinate, does the process feel normal? Is the frequency stable, not dramatically increased? Is the color within a healthy range? Are you free from persistent foaming or unusual odor? If so, your kidneys are performing one of the most complex and critical jobs in the human body, and they are doing it well. Your kidneys filter roughly 150 quarts of blood every single day. They remove waste, regulate fluid balance, manage electrolytes, and maintain blood pressure. They are, in every sense, the silent architects of your internal environment. And diabetes is one of their greatest threats. Diabetic nephropathy, kidney damage caused by prolonged high blood sugar, is gradual, progressive, and often symptom-free until it reaches advanced stages. The earliest sign is usually microalbuminuria, the presence of small amounts of protein leaking into the urine, something you cannot see or feel. But if your kidney function remains stable, if your lab work shows normal filtration rates, if your body is processing fluids the way it should, that is not a small thing. That is your kidneys demonstrating resilience. That is your body saying, this organ is intact. It is filtering. It is protecting. And here is where I want to share something with you. Because sometimes, these signs of resilience are best understood through someone who almost missed them. Althea is 61 years old, a retired flight attendant, grandmother of 3. She spent 32 years crisscrossing time zones, eating airport food, sleeping in shifts, living a life that left very little room for routine. When she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes at 54, she felt like the diagnosis was a verdict. Like her body had been silently failing for years, and she had been too distracted to notice. She told me once, sitting in my consultation room, her hands folded tightly in her lap, that the worst part was not the diagnosis itself. It was the fear of what had already been lost. She kept imagining the damage accumulating silently, the way rust eats through metal from the inside. She would lie awake at night, wondering if her kidneys were already scarred, if her eyes were already changing, if her feet would one day go numb. But then something shifted, not because of a miracle or a dramatic change, but because she started paying attention. She began to notice that she could still feel the cold bathroom tile in the morning. She could still read the watercolor instruction book she had recently picked up without straining. Her lab results, while not perfect, showed stable kidney function. Althea did not celebrate. That was not her way. But she began to paint. Watercolors of all things, something she had never tried in her life. And she told me, with a kind of quiet wonder, that the steady hand she needed for those delicate brushstrokes felt like proof. Proof that her body had not betrayed her. Proof that the nerve connections in her fingers, the focus in her eyes, the stamina in her posture, all of it was still there. She was not cured. She was not free of diabetes. But she was responding. Her body was responding. And that is the heart of what I want you to understand today. Now, the fourth ability. And this one is about something you do every night, or at least something your body attempts to do every night. Something so essential to human function that without it, everything else begins to unravel. Sleep. Specifically, I am talking about your ability to fall asleep within a reasonable time, stay asleep through the night without frequent disruptions, and wake up feeling at least partially restored. Not perfectly rested, that is rare for anyone over 40, but restored enough to function. Restored enough to think clearly, to feel emotionally stable, to face the day without that bone-deep exhaustion that makes everything harder. If that is still happening for you, even most of the time, it carries more significance than you might think. Because diabetes affects sleep in multiple overlapping ways, and the fact that you may not be experiencing those disruptions is itself a form of physiological testimony. Elevated blood sugar can cause frequent urination at night, a condition known as nocturia, which fragments sleep and prevents the body from entering the deep, restorative stages where cellular repair and memory consolidation occur. Neuropathic pain, that burning, tingling, or cramping in the legs and feet that some people with diabetes describe as electric, can make it nearly impossible to find a comfortable position. And the hormonal disruptions associated with insulin resistance can interfere with melatonin production and circadian rhythm regulation, making the brain unable to properly distinguish between day and night. There is also a lesser-known dimension. During sleep, your body engages in what researchers call glucose regulation rebalancing, a process where insulin sensitivity can actually improve during deep sleep stages. When sleep is fragmented, this process is interrupted, which can lead to higher fasting glucose the next morning, which leads to more anxiety, which leads to worse sleep the following night. It becomes a cycle, a vicious loop that feeds on itself. So when someone with diabetes still sleeps well, when the nights are relatively unbroken, when the body settles into rest without resistance, when morning arrives without that sense of having fought through the darkness, it is a sign that multiple systems are functioning in remarkable coordination. The nervous system is not generating enough pain to disrupt rest. The kidneys are managing fluid balance well enough to avoid constant nighttime trips to the bathroom. The hormonal environment is balanced enough to allow the brain to transition into and maintain sleep architecture. Good sleep for a person with diabetes is not just rest. It is a symphony of systems working together: nervous, renal, endocrine, neurological, all performing their roles in harmony. And if that symphony is still playing in your body, it is conducting it with a skill that deserves recognition. Finally, the fifth ability. And this one might be the most emotionally significant of all. It is your ability to heal. Think about the last time you got a small cut, while cooking, while gardening, while opening a package. Did the wound close within a few days? Did the skin knit itself back together without infection, without unusual swelling, without lingering for weeks? If it did, your body just demonstrated one of the most complex biological processes in existence. Wound healing requires coordinated action from your immune system, your circulatory system, your inflammatory response, and your cellular repair mechanisms. It demands adequate blood flow to deliver oxygen and nutrients to the injured site. It requires white blood cells to prevent infection. It needs collagen synthesis to rebuild tissue. Diabetes can impair every single one of those steps. High blood sugar slows white blood cell activity, weakens blood vessel walls, reduces oxygen delivery, and delays collagen formation. This is why chronic wounds are one of the most feared complications of uncontrolled diabetes, and why wound healing ability is one of the most meaningful indicators of metabolic health. So if your cuts still heal, if your bruises still fade, if your skin still repairs itself in a normal time frame, do not overlook that. That is not ordinary. For someone living with diabetes, that is extraordinary. It means your circulation is adequate. Your immune response is active. Your tissues are receiving what they need to rebuild. That is your body not just surviving, but repairing, regenerating, responding. Now, I want to be very clear about something, because this matters deeply, and I do not want it to be misunderstood. Having these 5 abilities intact does not mean you can relax your vigilance. It does not mean the work is done, or that diabetes has somehow become harmless, or that you no longer need to monitor, medicate, or manage. This condition requires ongoing attention, consistent, disciplined, sometimes exhausting attention, and that never changes. These abilities are not a guarantee of future health. They are a snapshot of present function, and the goal is to keep them. But what these abilities do tell you, and this is what I need you to hear, truly hear, is something that the fear and anxiety of a chronic diagnosis often drowns out completely. They tell you that your body is not passive. It is not simply absorbing damage in silence while you wait helplessly for the next complication. It is actively defending, actively maintaining, actively preserving function against a force that is constantly trying to erode it. And that is something worth recognizing, not with complacency, but with informed, clear-eyed respect for what your body is doing. Because here is the truth that too many people with diabetes never hear from anyone, in any appointment, in any pamphlet, in any late-night internet search. Your body is not your enemy. It is not working against you. In fact, every preserved nerve ending, every clear line of sight, every properly filtered fluid, every healed wound and restful night is your body working for you, fighting for you, with everything it has, even when the disease is present, even when the odds are difficult, even when you yourself have lost faith in it. Althea understood this, not through a textbook or a laboratory report, but through the feel of a wet brush against thick paper, the way the colors bled softly into one another, the steady hand that held it all together. She told me that painting taught her something no medical appointment ever had. It taught her to notice what was still there. Not what was lost, not what might be taken, but what remained. And what remained was enough. Enough to build on. Enough to protect. Enough to prove that her body, despite everything, was still showing up for her. So tonight, or tomorrow morning, I want you to try something. Take your shoes off and walk across the floor. Feel the texture beneath your feet. Look out the window and notice the detail in the distance. Pay attention to how you sleep. Watch how a small scratch on your hand closes over the next few days. And when you notice those things, when you feel them, see them, experience them, let that be the answer to the question that keeps you up at night. Your body is responding. It has been responding all along. You just needed to know where to look.